Hey there, welcome to Takeaway with Sam Oches, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I'm Sam Oches, editor-in-chief at NRN, and this is the show where I give you an all-access pass to the restaurant industry's most influential decision makers. This week, I'm talking with Barry McGowan, the CEO of Fogo de Chão, a Brazilian steakhouse chain that has grown to more than 100 locations globally, including 80 in the U.S. The brand specializes in churrasco, or high-quality fire-roasted meats, and it's using its quality position in the full-service space to build incredible momentum. That includes 10 new locations in the U.S. last year and another 10 to 12 planned for 2025. And the growth is certainly merited. I was excited to share with Barry live on the podcast that Fogo de Chão just made the list of America's favorite chains, a Technomic report published in NRN's January issue, and Fogo was the #1 full-service brand among Gen Z consumers. Barry is a 40-year veteran of the restaurant industry, and he has spent the past 12 years at Fogo building systems that have helped it become a favorite among younger consumers in particular. He joined the podcast to talk about why Fogo resonates so much today among American consumers and why it's perfectly tailored for the restaurant industry of the future. In this interview, you will learn more about why the full-service category is ripe for more customization, how younger consumers want authenticity, discovery, and value, and why culture is the first building block toward brand longevity. Jumping now into my interview with Fogo de Chão's Barry McGowan. Also, don't forget to stick around after the interview, as I will share my 6 takeaways from this discussion, actionable insights that you can take with you on the go. Okay, I'm sitting down with Barry McGowan, the CEO of Fogo de Chão. Barry, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Sam. Glad to be here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Very excited to talk about Fogo. Now, I got to admit, Barry, Fogo, the last couple of years has really announced itself on my radar. Before that, I think I'd kind of heard of this funny named brand. I didn't know much about it. But the last couple of years, it feels like you guys are all over the place. But for those listeners who maybe it's still not on their radar, what's the quick synopsis of what the brand's all about?
Sure. Well, thank you, Sam. I would say everybody thinks we're all of a sudden growing. It's been 27 years in America, one restaurant at a time, one shift at a time, as we always say in the industry. But we're actually a 45-year-old brand from Brazil. So actually, if you think about it, we now have over 100 locations globally, 80 in the U.S., coast to coast. So we're fully portable. I think this is what's happening, is the awareness of the brand is building because we're opening more restaurants now in existing locations or in existing markets. So what is great about our thesis now, we've spent really the last 12 years building platforms, positioning the brand, and done a real transformation of the brand the last 6 years. And you see that in the new restaurant openings, the innovation, the design, the experience, our service model, all those things have transformed. Now we're at this really inflection point of building brands. So I love the way you said it. People are going like, where did you come from? Well, we've been around for 45 years. U.S. is a big state. We only have 80 restaurants, but we're growing. We opened 10 restaurants last year in the U.S., which was our biggest year. We opened one in Brazil. It was actually a relocation in Brasilia, doing great. And this year we'll open 10 to 12 again. We've got about 9 under construction right now. Feel very good about our pipeline. But what's exciting is about 85% of our new locations next year, or this year, 2025, and next year will be about the same, are in existing locations. So when I started 12 years ago, we only had one market that had multi-units, and that was in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We had 5 locations. So today in America, now we have 15 trade areas that we have more than one location. So that just goes back to now we're building brand, we're becoming more aware. Our trial is picking up, and so is our frequency. All that tailwind is exciting to see. And as you know, our demographic is 87% millennial, Gen Z, Gen X, and we see that tailwind growth and the excitement about the brand building on social media, which is really fun.
Yeah. And it may seem like a silly question for any restaurant, but why does the brand resonate? Because obviously with any restaurant, you're like, oh, well, great food, of course. Yeah. But with Fogo, I mean, there's so much about this brand that seems different than anything else the U.S. has. So why do you think this resonates?
Well, it is rooted in authenticity. It's the culinary art form that is so distinctive. It's the only concept that you get real protein, nutrient-dense food, all for a fixed price and totally customizable. And the secret to it's immediacy. This is what I think drives our demographic. The idea of diet tribes. We call it, our millennials, younger generations travel through food. It's social, it's gathering, and there's no risk to it. And the other connotation to it, that it's all really good for you. If you're vegan, you can eat a Fogo de Chão. We have a vegan menu, which a lot of people are surprised to discover. We have a market table. We've been serving plant-based proteins for 45 years. So it's rooted in authenticity. It's easy to use, and it transcends culture and language. This is why we're so universal. We're really an international dining experience, and we don't have a menu that encumbers, your thought process. It's all the same menu. So our menu really lays out the price optionality. And if you want to indulge and try something further, in addition to our churrasco experience, you can do that. Or you can limit it to just the market table by itself. Or you can go to the bar and have a picanha burger. And everybody goes, picanha burger, it's for $10. It's a half-pound burger. We butcher all day long, and we just make great burgers with them. Say, hey, instead of having waste, we just bring that value to the guest to make sure they can enjoy it however you like to dine. So I think what makes it distinctive is that attribute and experience. Second, it's a kind of a fast, I'll not even say that, it is a fast experiential dining concept. You can get it as fast as you can at a Chipotle. You can customize. We just have more SKUs, and we have an ability to add full service onto that. And you can have wine or cocktails, all that with it. So it is distinctively different in terms of experience. But I could say this, the most craveable difference is we don't grill proteins. We slow roast them, simply prepare them, and just use salt. So we create a salty bark on the meat. And what's flavor forward is really the protein itself with salt. So that distinctive, we call it salty bark culinary edge. That's what we create, is very craveable. And then, like, we've just rolled out whole seafood for the first time. Our fresh seafood program is just beginning. We've launched whole branzino. We don't grill the fish. We put oil and salt on it and lemon, and we blister it. So we have blistered seafood. So those things are distinctive in flavor, highly correlated, I believe, the craveability of, the natural ingredients we serve. Coupled with everybody's in a dining room waiting on you. This goes back to the experience side of the model. Our chefs butcher, they prepare, and then they come serve you in the dining room. So in terms of service and hospitality, it's really high. And that's what drives the model, drives the experience. And I go back to underpins what we believe to be as an incredible value proposition for the consumer. So
sure. Well, big mistake I made was scheduling this for lunchtime, because I forgot to eat before, and holy smokes.
We'll send some over. We also have off premise. We'll send some over.
Perfect.
We'll text it over right now.
All right, Barry, I told you before we hit record that I have a surprise for you, and I'm going to go ahead and get to it. So don't hold it over you any longer. So we're about to announce NRN's America's Favorite Chains in partnership with Technomic. Fogo de Chão is on the top 10 America's favorite chains. But even cooler, I think, and to your point that you made about the younger generations, Fogo de Chão is the #1 full-service brand for Gen Z. And wow. I thought this was kind of amazing. So there we go. I'm glad I held that surprise for you so that we could get the authentic reaction.
Yeah.
I'm so curious about that, because, it's almost counterintuitive that younger generations, you would think, especially Gen Z, they're all about, fast casual. They're about, more affordability. Fogo seems to go kind of against that idea that Gen Z just really loves what you guys are doing. And I know you kind of got into it already, but just to lean into Gen Z in particular, for a generation that's just now come into some discretionary income, why do you think Fogo is resonating with them?
Well, first off, thank you for the surprise. That's a phenomenal surprise. I thought it was going to be something else related to the economy, some really good news.
No, I got good news for you.
It's even better news. So I tell you, it's very humbling, and I go back to its credit to our team, what they do every day, as you know, bringing the authenticity up front, engaging the consumer. But the Gen Z doesn't surprise me. And this is what I tell everybody when I speak to the demographic, and I share this with all of our shareholders. We met Bain Capital, we'd bring them in our dining room, and we'd say, look who's dining in our restaurant. It's the most exciting part of our brand is the food explorer, the Gen Z, the joy they find in dining out. what our concept does for them, and this is why I'm so excited about what you just shared with everybody and myself, is that's really what consumers want today. And this is where the separation of fast casual, we've got some great fast casual concepts that deliver great quality, really good food. The simplicity of it works, but the experience is lacking. We have a fast casual operating model, but we add service on top of it and huge hospitality with protein-centric and nutrient-dense whole food that's totally customizable. So it's similar in nature, but it's more social, relaxing, and it's full service that adds, I would say, some panache to it. And by the way, I'd say this, remember Gen Z and the younger generation, you get anything you want now on a phone, which is exciting.
Yeah.
So the idea, the barbell of convenience, quality for money, speed, can be delivered. I can go through fast casual, but if I'm going to go out, it's got to be worth it. And this is where Fogo de Chão really leans into. We continue to innovate around that. We want to add more discovery for this young generation who is willing to try anything. And this is where our concept, we can do that. And it's no risk because there's no extra cost to it. It's just part of the experience. So
Sure.
That's great news. I can't tell you. That's pretty exciting. So
yeah. Well, and just to give you the full perspective, you are number 7 in the top 10 all chains, number 7.
We've never been on this list. So this is, again, number 7. I mean, I'll just say this, we're a small brand, and I can't wait to share with the team because it's, again, a credit to them. The journey has been 27 years in America. And I'll even say this will make news in Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
Folks in Sao Paulo are really proud of this brand. We do claim to be the ambassadors to Brazil. We speak, our team members, a lot of them, you know, are from Brazil. So I think that's very, very, wow. So thanks.
Yeah, great validation for everything you guys are doing there, for sure. So Barry, you mentioned your 12 years there, but we should also say you've been in this industry for decades, and you've got incredible experience in the restaurant industry. And I'm curious, from your perspective, you know, with your experience prior to Fogo, what did you see in this brand? You must have known something about the potential in this brand that you're validating now, as we see from America's favorite chains. What was it that you saw and that you wanted to accomplish, and what do you feel like you really have accomplished?
First off, it was full hospitality. At the forefront of the culture was about the guest, the embedded nature of the brand. We call her a matriarch, Selma, who was the first general manager in Addison, Texas. The culture was genuine hospitality at the forefront, rooted in authenticity, their pride of Brazil, their care for their language, the art form, and who they stood for in terms of the brand. So I think that was at the forefront. But when I walked in and saw the operating model, understood what it was and its differential, the structural advantages it had. This is 12 years ago. Remember, 12 years ago, we were talking about how expensive labor was getting and supply. So we almost operate at a high velocity volume with no kitchen versus our peers in full service. So the structural advantage I saw right away. And I tell you, the key differential for me was the idea of whole food 12 years ago. The idea of natural, whole good, nutrient-dense foods, totally customizable. This was the demographic stuff you were talking about and writing about 12 years ago. That all the makeups of everything we knew was trending was kind of already there. We just needed to innovate and create system, process, build out infrastructure around them, and define it for the team. And that's really what we spent the last 12, I would say, the first 6 years doing. The last 6 years, we basically put that all into design, footprint training, and are scaling the culture along with those attributes of the brand. So the core attributes are what attracted me: the immediacy, totally customizable. The idea of the core ingredient is never going to change. It's going to be timeless. Mm-hmm. It's, slow roasted animal protein and all the things that are good for you, up front. So those were the things that drew to me 12. And by the way, when you said that, it actually reminds me, it took us 12 years to get to a fresh seafood program. So it shows you everything takes time. Yeah. You've got to do it at the right time. The things we pulled forward in trend were great was when dry age came in, we rolled out the dry age tomahawk right at the right time and we just blew it off. So that was easy because it's what we did. We added Wagyu 4 years ago. Actually, during COVID, we added Wagyu, and everybody's like, what are you doing? Of course, there was a lot of overhang. It was inexpensive. We could sell it, and we sold it like crazy today, staple part of our indulgent menu. This year, we've got great stuff coming in innovation. Again, we talked about the fresh seafood. We're looking at butter bath, lobster tail. Anyhow, I won't go into too much. We're going to announce it soon, but some really cool side items, small indulgent items that we can add. So I think those were the things that attracted me 12 years. Those are the things I'm really excited about now. We said that we're at that inflection point of brand building. We're also at the point where all the platforms have been built. We have this flywheel of platforms and innovation. So I'm really excited is now we're going to start turning that flywheel really hard and having a lot of fun and creating a lot of discovery and speaking really directly with this incredible demographic we have who are highly engaged with our brand socially. So we're going to let them tell the story and start unlocking that with our new agency, Gale Agency out of New York. So I'm pretty excited to work with Bain and Gale on all the new stuff we're working on.
So to park it there for a second, this industry is not one of patience. I've covered this industry for 15 years. You've been in this industry for going on 40 years, I think. And we've seen there's been so many changes, right? Now, some things, in some ways, history repeats itself, right? But there's constant change, and I feel like that's often because this industry is not patient because the consumer is not patient. And especially today in this day and age of third-party delivery and online ordering and convenience, patience is just not one of the strong suits of restaurants. And I especially see it too in emerging operators that get, a couple open and then they're like, I'm going to open 100 next year. They're very eager to go fast because there's this idea that you've got to capitalize quickly. And everything you've just said to me, I'm hearing patience. Like, is that a value of yours? I mean, did you know 12 years ago you would take time to build these systems?
Yeah. You always assume when you get in things are going to happen faster, but the mistake to our industry is you can't outgrow your culture. And so it's culture first. You've got to scale culture, meaning your people, your thesis, who you are, what's it about. That belief system is inherent to longevity. Innovation's easy when you have more people aligned in value. So I go back to a restaurant is the last thing you build. You got to start there. And that's what we were really purposeful 12 years ago. Today, we're 140% staffed to 2019. Shows you we're growing our human capital base first. And that allows us to do all the capture rate in the restaurant, the training, the fun stuff. And then we always say our first dollar revenue goes to our team, training, hiring, adding team. Second dollar goes to ingredient, assets, supplies, all those things. The third goes to our community. What else we can do to expand and make a difference to where we are to be in the heart of a community versus just a restaurant. And then what's left is we ask permission to build a new restaurant. But we can only do that if we have the human capital that's ready to open it. So this is why it's taken 27 years to get to 80 restaurants. Remember, Texas Roadhouse has 700 restaurants. They've been in the U.S. about the same time, 27 years. They've done it masterfully. They've done it incredibly well. So we love those guys. We follow them. We just think they're the best in class. They know who their consumer is, and Jerry and the team just execute well. The culture is very similar to ours. So we're just Brazilian version. We're a little different. But I would say, you have to have patience because opening restaurants is the easiest thing you can do to open them. To operate them every day and execute well is the most difficult thing to do. So that's why we always say we open one restaurant at a time. We focus by shift and we measure what the guest sentiment is. That's our scorecard. That's the most important sentiment. Are we growing traffic each year? Or are we taking share? I have to say we finished 2024, although a challenging time, we took share. Versus Black Box, we finished year to date ahead of casual plus, and fine dining. Fast casual was ahead of us. Casuals had a snapback. And now on a 2-year stack, we took market share. And when I say market share traffic, we have outperformed all 4 categories. Small brand, awareness is growing, trial is growing, and frequency is growing. So that's the tailwind of a market share gain. So the point being, it's not, if you go too fast, your idea may be great, but if you don't execute it, as we all know, that's the Achilles heel to growth. That's what you got to be very cautious of. Your valuation doesn't go up by how many restaurants you have. It goes up by how profitable each restaurant is. And if you can use your free cash flow to open your next one. That's the algorithm that we've been very purposeful over the last 12 years to build.
Yeah.
And that's really what helps us to build a brand. But I'd say this too, your earlier comment, all that's going on, the change, Sam, I tell you, this is an exciting time for the industry driven by our consumer.
Mm-hmm.
The consumer is why we're here. What I love is, all the emerging brands, the fast casual, look at Kava. There's some great, cool, exciting stuff coming on. And our industry is going to, and I always tell everybody, we're going through a renaissance, another one. We just keep doing this. And that's the difference about our industry. We're not going away. We learned during COVID the resilience and the power of social connection with full service and fast casual and delivery. Now we have everything for the consumer. So now it's about giving them more value, better experiences, and executing well against it. We do that, we're going to continue to grow as an industry. We're going to continue to be the largest employer and very much the soul of every community we're in. Remember, when COVID happened and nobody can go to the restaurant, our communities were soulless. So this is an exciting time for us to remember that, this is the healthiest time I've seen our industry in some time.
Yep.
We're just reigniting what matters most, and it's a great time.
So to that point, all amazing, incredible advice. But to your final point, yes, I totally agree. Just following what the consumer wants. I mean, so critical. But it's an interesting time right now because, especially in full service, which I know you know well, because you've been in the full service category beyond Fogo. The full service industry. I believe Technomic data shows that 2024 there was attrition in full service locations. Of course, labor and inflation and all of the various challenges have hit full service particularly hard. To use an example, I think, though, of the transition we're in, you are about to open a Fogo right by my house, which I'm very, very excited about here in Columbus in the Polaris area. You are opening in a former O'Charlie's. Right. And we remember a year ago, O'Charlie's announced this wave of closures, which was really on trend with everything going on in that category, in the casual category. And, no disrespect to our friends at O'Charlie's, but, that is so indicative, I think, of what's happening in the industry today, that this wave that's going out and Fogo, the wave that's coming in. But what I really want to ask you about is how you ensure that this isn't just a wave, that this isn't just Gen Z wants this now, but they're going to start having kids and they're going to start finding other restaurants that they want to go to. How do you ensure Fogo kind of plants its roots and can follow Texas Roadhouse as being this just gangbuster success year over year and not it kind of fades away, the wave kind of crashes?
That's a great statement. The example of Polaris and O'Charlie's, we don't do prototypes. That's the difference between us and maybe other casual dining brands. We don't believe our brand is defined by a box that looks like something or has a stripes or a certain moniker on it. The name Fogo de Chão is just fire on the ground. That's who we are. So we like to say would be silly here, so don't take this serious. I tell my team, look, it's alpha and omega. Look, we're the beginning and the end. It all began with fire on the ground, right? We're roasting proteins. If everything goes away in the industry, we're just going to put a fire on the ground. We're going to still roast proteins and sell it. This is how simple our business could be. But point being is we have to innovate and have to be relevant. So dining out is the key moniker. The value proposition has to be right. And what you just said is right. If we don't keep innovating, paying attention, and this is why I go back to we're attracting the Gen Z, Gen X. Remember, Gen Z and millennials are bringing their children to our restaurant already. Gen Zs are coming into their own to be able to afford. When they want to go out to eat, they tell their parents and friends, take me to Fogo, because the value and the experience meets their desire because it's totally customizable in the moment. That's really the way it's going to be. So everybody with a fixed menu, a curated view, there's a place for that. But where the consumer goes, it's going to become more about, them, and you have to have your model operating out. We just have a structural advantage. We just take less labor to do it. It's simple, but difficult and very challenging. And by the way, our costs are structurally different, but we've been doing it for 45 years. And it gets back to your point of speed. We've perfected it. We put training. We've got tools, technology, everything behind to help us execute it better. And we're now the category leader in this space in churrasco globally. We came from Brazil. There's a lot of people out there. But today we're the largest, and we want to be the best in class global brand to share this art form with everybody around the world, in every major capital city of the world. So to us, we don't think of a prototype. I can build a restaurant in O'Charlie's. In Dadeland, we're doing a conversion of a Chili's. We've done conversions of Brios, Bravos, P.F. Chang's. So some of it's not the chain going away. It's just their leases are coming up. And this is the key thing about the maturity curve. You've got all this real estate, prime real estate, that's great, but people are hitting their primary terms and they're ending. And developers want to retool their portfolios. So it gives us, being a small international brand, an opportunity to come into great real estate, spend half the capital, lower the risk, and give more value to our customer. So, that's where the equation comes in, that, full service is dissipating, but it's going to be absorbed by Fogos and other new brands and Cavas, things that are more relevant. So I tell everybody it's not to spare. That's actually good. It helps us economically. It helps the up and coming folks. So that's I call it the renaissance or the transformation of our industry that's happening before our eyes. This just isn't technology. It is brick and mortar. So it moves slower. We are human capital intensive, by the way, which is good. All those things are why the transformation takes a little longer. But you, with all your stuff you do, all every CEO you speak to, you can see that unfold just in all your interviews you've done. So.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned earlier in the interview about how you have 15 markets where you have multiple locations in the market. And that's a goal of yours as you grow. Obviously, a goal of anybody as they're growing is to build out a market and maximize that potential there. But, there's been some indication with some brands in the casual dining space in particular that maybe they got out over their skis in terms of too many builds, too many locations, kind of spreading it around too much. And I'm curious, obviously when you grow a restaurant, you can grow by locations, you can grow footprint, or you can grow within the four walls. You can grow, maximize the sales of each location. And I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, because, if I think of a Fogo and you guys enter Columbus, what's going to happen is, whoa, Columbus has a Fogo, like everybody's going to come over here to go to the Fogo, right? And I think some restaurants have that luxury. They have the luxury of saying like, this market gets to have us, right? Versus once you build out and throw several into a market, it loses its shine just a little bit. Not saying that's going to happen with Fogo, but I guess I'm mostly curious about how you find that balance. How do you find growth in footprint versus growth in the four walls, and making sure that you don't overbuild to the point where it's, you spread it around too much and you have to start closing locations?
No, it's great. And I go back to, let's use Texas Roadhouse. Their AUVs have climbed the year. When we started, our AUVs were, just under 7 million. Today, they're close to 10. So it goes back to your corporate on thesis. Why do we grow at this scale or the pace we're doing? Is because you have to grow off your core business. This goes back to your point of speed. You can't outgrow your cash flow. So we don't do that. We just use free cash flow to open our next restaurant. When that generates cash, then we open another restaurant. So that's what builds your base. At the same time, also cultivates your human capital pipeline. So that's the thesis underneath. And then when we look at a market for us, it's about optimizing a market. So we're not fortifying a market. So fortification becomes the idea of, market share is all about how many restaurants you have. Now, Starbucks does it well. Remember, they've opened a lot and then they've closed some down. So they've over-penetrated. So I think we think today in America, we're 27 years, 45 years of brand. What we're thinking about is the next 45 years. Having 15 multi-unit markets isn't even close. All it does is give operational efficiency. So we're already highly profitable. So as we scale these units, we get operational efficiency. Our cost per guest acquisition drops because of social. Our procurement becomes more efficient. And that goes back to preserving our price value for a consumer. What we're excited about brand building and opening units and being a multi-unit, even going to, we call it a new market like Ohio. It's a great culinary market. We're not going to build 20 of them in all of Ohio. We might build 5, maybe 4. So that's just enough to put an area director, have infrastructure, build a team, and make a difference in the community. That's the way we see it. And we think about the next 45 years and what that looks like over time. But, the consumer market isn't shrinking, it's growing. It's just mix shifting, like you said, from things that are coming into primary, brands that are tired and being replaced with new. But I also want to share this too. Like, I always put names out there because I'm a fan of the industry. I love our industry. We're all doing the right things. But you take a mature brand, which is Chili's. By the way, I'm a chili head. I grew up bartending with them, work with Doug Brooks. They're crushing it. That's exciting to me that they've gone back to, gosh, we got to compete like heck for the brand. We got to give value and we got to make sure the consumer wins. That's the greatest signal you can say when you got winners. You got Darden's, Texas Longhorn that's crushing it. You got, Outback retooling. You got Chili's showing the way that when you do it, it can happen. And then Texas Roadhouse, who's never conceded on the thesis that the consumer's first, their team member and their culture and their community. So it goes back to the fundamentals that haven't changed. Those that grew too fast and got ahead of their human capital and lost their culture have to retool or be replaced. That's the best part. And by the way, the consumer wins in that. That's why our equation economically is so healthy for economies, local communities, because we are what we believe is foundational in every community in terms of hiring, staffing, and generational.
So Chili's, I think, their success has been incredible to watch.
Yeah.
Of course, the team there, Kevin and his team over at Chili's, doing a phenomenal job. But what's so fascinating to me about Chili's is how much TikTok and Instagram has really helped to sort of relaunch it into the stratosphere. That doggone cheese pull with like gazillion views just suddenly thrust them into the spotlight. But what I'm curious about from your perspective, because you watch something like that, you watch a Chili's sort of resurrect itself with the help of social media. Fogo de Chão, you guys obviously, that the younger generations love you. We have data now to validate that the younger generations love you.
We've been saying it. It is helpful now. I can sign and say, look, really, I wasn't lying.
You could put your money where your mouth is. That's right. So, I mean, I think to myself, well, Fogo, like, who else has the show of what you guys are doing, right? I mean, you guys really do have kind of a show to what you're doing. And so I have to imagine that social media must be a very natural place for you guys to play. Do you feel like that plays a role in how you're connecting with the younger generations?
It is. And to be honest with you, this is something with Bain Capital that we set out right up front when we did the acquisition with Bain. We just shared with them, look, we have brand love that we just aren't leveraging. We're operators. We've been heads down focusing on this, but we look back and gosh, we're kind of surprised when we measured versus all the best socially, I call it brand love, social mapping. We were like our bubble was big. It kind of took us by surprise. And maybe this is where, humbly speaking, what you shared with me today, that I think we felt it, we just didn't see it. But what Bain Capital has worked with us on is how do we unlock that? They gave us permission to go upstream with a great ad agency who is really strong at it, and that's Gale Agency out of New York. Otherwise, we'd be too small. Look, Bain Capital is really investing in that idea that, hey, invest in our consumer that already knows us. How do we unlock that brand love and really reward that brand love even further? So we're launching our first loyalty program this year. We're technically doing our first media campaign in terms of a media launch this year. So we got some exciting things to start sharing the brand love and then pulling through, I would say, what our fan base does, just like you said, socially already. I mean, every time they come into Fogo, they're with the camera. I mean, when you see some of our buzz reels we put out opening, you see everybody just there with their camera, videotaping everything, Look at me eating Wagyu. It's really fun, by the way. And to your point, our brand is well suited for it. It's made for it. And this is what drives the demographic, and our tailwind is that. And you said something too about, remember, we also have a component of 26% family. We don't market it. We don't do it. It's organic. Millennials bring their kids in. Gen Z is, they're now growing up, and now they're bringing their friends. They're coming to Bar Fogo for all day happy hour. They come to our wine and Wagyu event in the bar, or they'll go do a wine dinner. It's pretty exciting to see how they engage the brand at different occasions and how they engage it socially too. It's pretty, we're still small, learning how to do it, but I'm really proud of our marketing team and Gale Agency and all the work that Bain Capital's done to work with us to unlock that. It'll take a couple of years to unlock it, but I think that's further upside. And
Sure.
that's just part of making sure that we're relevant to the consumer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Barry, you and I are speaking 8 days into 2025. And, obviously, I'm sure you guys have a plan for the year, a roadmap, so to speak, for where you hope to go from here. To take a step back and look at the macro environment, of course, inflation hopefully has peaked. Hopefully the consumer feeling a little bit better about their spend. Obviously, you have a new administration coming in. Do you feel optimistic for 2025 that the headwinds might get a little not so strong? What do you see for this year ahead?
I think so. I think the biggest thing, if you remember, even like going into last 18 months, all the economic indicators were all heading the right way. And so the only thing that was opposite of that was consumer sentiment. And they were feeling it. We all know the inflation. You can't hide it. The whole perplexing conversation around, inflation's going down. It was going down, but the consumer goes year over year. It's mounted up. So that has impacted, visitation. It's impacted, how people manage check, and they're becoming more selective of where they go. By the way, that's not new. So during the last 5 years, we've averaged 2.5% price. This is why we maintained price, because we knew even through COVID, what people were doing was wasn't sustainable. So this is where we took share again, because our price value is strong. We work just harder because remember, we don't have a menu. We can work on ingredient cost and mix shift perpetually to keep costs low, to keep price as low as we can. So all that meaning is going into the tailwinds or going into 25, we're still going to have cost pressure. We have great strategies because we can move quickly, nimbly by overhang. We don't contract like other brands do. So that is going to help offset some of what we think the supply demand issues. It's not in balance. We have both. We have supply and high demand. So price pressure is staying relatively the same. And I'd say the biggest shift since last year, and maybe it's election, consumer sentiment has lifted up. There is more. It's kind of bottomed out and it's lifting, and that's a key behavior. There's two inflection points, as you know. One is employment wages are now outpacing inflation, so that's a good sign. That inflection point is healthy. Okay, I'm making a little bit more money. Inflation has subsided, and now this year versus last year, it might feel about the same versus it expanding. So that key, I would say, psychological piece from a consumer is healthy. It's probably why we're seeing sentiment move forward. And then the invert of, everybody's lowering prices. So that spread between out of home and, restaurant pricing is narrowing. So that's also a good indication for full service. So we see that being a bellwether good guy. Now, what happens politically, we don't care, but economically, we think it should be much better than next year. And I do think second half of the year, we should be beyond new administration and people should have visibility to it. So hopefully anything outside of our control, I think it's going to be a good year. I don't think it's going to be skyrocket. I think we're going to be lumpy and then kind of pull out of it. But I think the consumer's in a good place and we're grateful for that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Barry, last question. I want to make sure I give you a chance to talk a little bit about No Kid Hungry and Share Our Strength. You and I have touched base on this before. Obviously, I'm sure most of our audience is familiar with this organization, but you personally and Fogo de Chão very invested in No Kid Hungry. Could you just quickly tell us a little bit about your participation in that program?
Sure. Look, it's near and dear. And I say this to everybody. Look, what Billy and have done with Share Our Strength and No Kid Hungry. It's been part of our industry for a very long time. In fact, it kind of collaborated through that. If you go, it went from, famine to introducing chefs to restaurants to we just coalesced behind it. And I would say, this year we raised our record sum for us, $250,000 for a campaign with them. Our team was very humbled and excited. But we do it because ending childhood hunger is very possible. And I remind everybody in the industry or is listening to this that, most of our industry, the people we hire at the tip of the spear have been food insecure or are food insecure. So Fogo de Chão, we take that seriously. And then we feed our team every day. We don't charge them. We just feed them every day because we know that's foundational. We give them food to take home if they need to. And point being is, nutrition's critical. And I say this, No child hungry matters to our industry. Our next employee is going to come through that rank. Remember, just know that it's just foundational to us, to all society, but for our industry, it's also critical. So we are real proud partners. Last 10 years, we've raised over 1.5 million for them. We're still a small company, but we keep thinking of ways we can keep building that. We're looking for the day that we raise $1 million a year. And that's what our team keeps thinking. How do we raise $1 million a year? We're always looking at strategies each year for this upcoming year. How do we, beat last year and do more for our community? And I'd say it means a lot to our team because they know it, they've experienced it, or they know somebody who has, and they rally behind it easily. So my job's easy. I just help challenge them on what we can do. But right now, what's really important for all those listening, we have a CEO pledge going right now. You've helped us communicate that to encourage every CEO to come aside, whether you're restaurant, retail, or just technology, what you can do to end childhood hunger. But the pledge is specifically about ending summer hunger. Because as you know, when kids are out of school, that's the biggest gap to, basically food and nutrition for those in need or who are food insecure. So we're really unlocking about $29 billion that Share Our Strength unlocked in a bipartisan effort with both parties. We have 2 million kids being served today during the summer, but there's 30 million need. So we're looking to raise $50 million in the next 3 years with CEOs to close the gap, bridge that funding. And we'd like to close the gap of 30 million kids during the summer. So that pledge, it's achievable. We're working hard with schools on the weekends, but the summer's our biggest opportunity to help end childhood hunger. So thank you for allowing the opportunity to share that. And I'd really encourage anybody who's interested to just look up No Kid Hungry, Share Our Strength, and join the pledge. It's a great cause and easy for our industry to support. I would say that because we serve people every day. We feed people every day. So an extension of what we do is to do that who are most vulnerable in our community. And that's real critical.
That's incredible. Very admirable work, Barry. Thank you for that. And admirable work with Fogo de Chão as well. Very exciting to watch your success and excited to watch it more closely when you guys open near me. And by the way, congratulations again on America's Favorite Chains. Very exciting for you.
Thank you for the surprise on that. And by the way, I'll meet you in Columbus. I'm going to take you back. We're going to get in the butcher. We're going to do the same thing in the butcher room. We're going to walk you through the culinary art form.
I love it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm excited about that. Thank you, Barry. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
That was my interview with Fogo de Chão's Barry McGowan. So what should you learn from this interview? Here are my 6 takeaways. My first takeaway is that the full service category is ripe for more customization. We've heard about the customization trend for probably going on 20 years now, really ever since Chipotle rose to prominence. Fast casuals in particular have been all about customization and how much younger consumers want to customize their meals. We rarely hear about customization being prominent among full service brands. I think Fogo de Chão is the first brand to really come to prominence using customization as one of their core brand tenets. So if you've never been to Fogo, the way it works is that you can kind of choose your own adventure with their menu. The star of the show are these fire roasted meats that are brought out to you by the chefs who have butchered and roasted and are now serving that meal. And then you can kind of pick and choose the other parts of the meal that you want to surround that protein choice. That ability to customize your experience at Fogo really helps to drive value. Customers can kind of go either side of the barbell depending on the type of experience that they're looking for. As Barry pointed out in the interview, it also allows for a lot more ability to follow whatever diet plan you're following. So again, that checks another box for younger consumers in particular. But it also, in general, just gives customers more fun in the experience. You're not put into a box of pointing to that meal and getting everything that it comes with. You can really, again, choose your own adventure and discover new things on the menu and go with whatever experience you're looking for at Fogo. Barry really said in this interview that, that the demographic skews younger because of that ability to customize, curate your meal. He said something that I appreciated too. He talked about value, but he used that term price optionality. kind of a fancy term for value, I think. But what you think of, what it really leads me to think about is how much, younger customers are going to be more on a tight budget. They've got some discretionary income, but they're not going too crazy luxurious in their lifestyle choices. And so price optionality means they can go in and choose whatever price point that they want at Fogo, still get that high quality experience, but leave feeling like they haven't broken the bank in doing so. My second takeaway is that quality does not always require complexity. Simplicity is kind of the name of the game at Fogo, as Barry talked about in the interview. That really starts with these fire roasted meats that are the core of the menu. They're slow roasted and they really just include salt. As far as seasoning goes, they have a salt bark on them that, when slow roasted, brings out an incredible flavor in the meat. And it's a very simple recipe for their core product. Yes, they have plenty of other SKUs on the menu and other dishes that they're making with other ingredients. But Barry points out that simplicity, and then again, the simplicity of the service, where you've got folks in the back who are roasting the meat and then bringing it right out to you. You don't have layers of service or layers of other chefs, people in the kitchen that it has to go through. It's just right from the fire pit out to the table. And there's still quality there, but it's simple. And Barry really stressed that by building systems around that simplicity, keeping things very authentic to the Brazilian concept that started 45 years ago, and really not adding too many more bells and whistles to that experience, that simplicity has really driven Fogo de Chão's rise to prominence here in the past few years. The other thing I'll point out too that Barry mentioned was that, as trends come and go in the restaurant industry, keeping things very simple has really given them the benefit of not needing to ride those trends. They don't ride or die by the trends. They're able to really home in on that simple menu, the simple core menu of those slow roasted meats, and just kind of stick to what they're doing, and that be sort of trend proof as the industry evolves going into the future. My third takeaway is that younger consumers want authenticity, discovery, and value. Now, I bet you two of those things you already knew. Authenticity, we've known about that for years and years. Millennials were, I think, especially the ones who talked about wanting an authentic experience, authentic menu, whatever that meant to them. Authenticity is very prevalent in Fogo de Chão, obviously for a chain that started in Brazil 45 years ago and is still true to those Brazilian roots. You're going to see that authenticity throughout the brand. And the value, as we talked about before, Barry talked about price optionality and the ability to curate your own experience and find the price point that really matters to you. But it's the discovery, I think, that's important here. And one of the reasons why Fogo has kind of exploded onto the scene in the past few years. Discovery means here's this global concept with perhaps new menu items that folks have never heard about, or a new kind of experience that they've not had at other restaurants. And especially the younger consumers who want to come in and discover new experiences. And yes, of course, share that on their social feeds by providing that discovery, the sort of surprise and delight, if you will. They're going to be excited to return. They're going to share it with their friends, and they're probably going to share it on their social accounts. My fourth takeaway is that the systems that support a long-lasting brand can take a while to build. This has been kind of a theme on Takeaway the last several episodes, this idea that, in this industry, you're not running a sprint, you're running a marathon. If you want your concept, your business to be successful, that takes time. Yes, there are some short-term things you can do in brand building, especially when it comes to marketing and things like that. But when it comes to the operations, the systems, the growth that you want to accomplish, that does take time. Barry has been in this industry for 40 years, and he's been at Fogo de Chão for 12 of those years, first as president and for the past 6 years as CEO. And in those 12 years, he's been helping to build these systems that can sustain Fogo for the long term. I told Barry, I really was not so familiar with Fogo de Chão, really even 4 or 5 years ago. It's been in the past 3 or 4 years that it's burst onto the scene, really gotten my attention, and now I can't ignore it. It seems like it is everywhere because suddenly everybody's fallen in love with this brand. That is intentional. They took the time to build those systems that would turn Fogo into such a success. And Barry said this thing. He said, they built the flywheel, and now they're going to start turning it hard, right? So that flywheel where all of the systems here are in place to spin the flywheel of success And they're going to start spinning it now that those systems are in place. And that's going to lead to more growth. Related to that, my fifth takeaway is that culture is the first building block toward brand longevity. So in sharing his tips for how to spend all that time in building systems and operations, Barry stressed that culture and team are the first things you want to invest in. Because he said, innovation is easy if your people are aligned. I thought that was a really good point to make. And that, in these 12 years that they've been setting Fogo up for success, and even longer than that, everything has come down to, are we hiring the right people? Are we training them? Are we investing in them? Do we have the right culture in place? And he said this too. He said, our first dollar of revenue goes back to the team, back into hiring and training and retention. Our second dollar goes into the assets and the supplies and the operations. And the third dollar goes into the community. Your first priority has to be those people who make your brand a success. And if you can invest in culture like that, then again, that flywheel can start spinning and the rest of it will come later. Last point about this I'll make that Barry said is, he said, opening restaurants is the easiest thing you can do, right? It's just, here's a blueprint, here's some money, build a restaurant. Running that restaurant is the hardest thing that you can do. And you have to have the right people in place to do that. So remember, don't get your priorities confused. Don't race out and build a bunch of restaurants until you have those people in place who can help to operate them. My sixth and final takeaway is that the restaurant revolution is as much powered by brick and mortar as by technology. And what I mean by that is I pointed out to Barry the fact that my local Fogo de Chão, which is about to open up, I am so excited, opening here in Columbus where I'm based, it is taking over a spot once occupied by O'Charlie's. O'Charlie's, of course, recently closed a bunch of locations and is going through some hard times. And to me, as I mentioned to Barry, it represents sort of a changing of the guards in the restaurant industry of this kind of tired sports bar concept replaced by this exciting global, popular brand that resonates with these younger consumers. And Barry pointed out, it's not necessarily the bells and the whistles that are going to appeal to people and help that changing of the guard. To some degree, it's simply the brick and mortar. It's the leases coming available. He said there's a maturation process that has really coming to fruition now in the restaurant industry where some concepts are, their lease terms are up and the landlords, the developers are looking for something more exciting, an up and coming brand to take that spot. And Fogo de Chão is perfectly positioned to be that brand. Of course, with its popularity among younger consumers and the ways in which it's really representing the future of the restaurant industry, developers want Fogo there. They also want brands like Cava and other emerging chains that are coming up. So the restaurant industry of the future it's really changing before our eyes, like Barry said. And some of it's just a matter of the brick and mortar that's coming available and these emerging chains that are capitalizing on that brick and mortar. Those are all my takeaways for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please remember to subscribe to Takeaway wherever you listen to podcasts and leave your feedback. You can also email me at sam.oches@informa.com. Thanks again and talk to you next week.